Hello everyone. Despite being somewhat negative in my AKASO Brave 4 review, I still enjoyed using this camera. So I decided to spend a little extra money on a more premium model from AKASO, and hopefully this addresses all the criticisms I had with the Brave 4. Today, I'm looking at the AKASO V50 Elite. This video is going to be a little different. I'm not going to do any tutorials this time around, this is just a full, proper review. First off is the design. Now I usually don't talk about design, because what is there to really say? Every camera is a rectangular prism with a lens in the corner. Sometimes the lens is in the center. Wow, so different, so innovative. However, with this thing, there's a giant tacky 4K 60 badge on it. I hate it. This is something you put on your box, not on the actual camera. Like, if it's a small print that says 4K, I don't mind that, but there's a giant reflective 4K 60 badge. Why? Another problem I have with this design is that there's too many LEDs. There's one on the 4K 60 badge. There's one on the shutter button. There's one on the screen. I don't mind this one. Usually cameras do have an LED here. And there's one on the bottom. There's too many, and there's no option to turn it off. For example, I tried to record some ducks doing its natural thing, but because this light is constantly flashing, it drew attention to the camera, and the duck stopped doing what it was doing to stare at me. Like, come on. That's just poor design in my opinion. Next up is the build quality. Now, it's made out of this rubber-like material. It feels pretty good to the touch, but I know from experience that this type of rubber stops being vulcanized after a while, and once that happens, it gets pretty nasty. It's not too great at hiding marks and dings. I'm not sure how visible that is to the camera, but it is visibly scuffed. Also on the bottom here. While I do like the sliding battery cover, it's a little too loose and it takes very little effort for it to slide open. When it was in a bag, I've had the door open by itself a couple times. Durability wise, I can't say it holds up too well. I had a rough drop onto concrete, and as you can see, the corners have cracked. Now it's not just a cosmetic issue, the touchscreen itself doesn't actually fully work anymore. So I'm in video settings. If I try to click video resolution, no response. If I try to click video encoder, no response. How about image stabilization? See, this isn't image stabilization, this is loop recording. If I go back, you can see loop recording is highlighted. What if I try to click photo? That did not work at all. Here's another thing. I over-tightened the tripod screw, and now there's a direct hole into my camera. Now the back of it is still in the camera. If I shake the camera a bit, you can hear it rattle around in there. Not exactly the best build quality, I would say. Battery-wise, I was able to get around 50 minutes of 4K video recording with image stabilization on. Not too great, but at least the battery's hot swappable. Now, I can live with all of those issues, as long as the video's pretty decent. And here's some good news, the video's pretty good. Detail is pretty good, colors are pretty good, they're a bit on the flatter side, but that's fine. And yeah, I have no complaints about the video quality.
Turns out candlestick part used to be over here. Shit.
However, having good video quality isn't enough to make a good camera. There needs to be good supplementary features, like image stabilization or other shooting modes, which this camera kinda doesn't have. For example, high frame rate modes. Now there's a giant 4K 60 FPS badge, but I don't really use 4K 60 FPS because there is no image stabilization in this mode. Now here's a simple panning shot with image stabilization off.
I think this time it took less time. Then again, it wasn't my first time doing it, so...
And it's terribly shaky. It just isn't pleasant to look
It wasn't
at.
as stressful. I think I might be above the cloud layer. That's kinda cool, I guess.
There's no image stabilization in high frame rate modes unless you turn the resolution down to 1080p. camera likes having image stabilization off. If you're in a mode that has image stabilization, like any 30 FPS mode, you switch over to something that doesn't have image stabilization, like 60 FPS or linear mode, when you switch back, the image stabilization is going to be off again. There's been multiple times where I switch to a high frame rate mode, let's say I want to do a panning shot, or I want to do a linear shot, and when I switch back, I forget to turn on image stabilization again, and the rest of my videos for the day are very shaky. It's very annoying. I wish they had image stabilization on by default, or there was a way to quick toggle it instead of diving into the settings every time.
And instead of, turning left like you're supposed to, I went right, because obviously we're going down the mountain. I just stepped in it. Ah, fuck. It gets me again.
As for the image stabilization, it's serviceable. It works great in perfect conditions, but perfect conditions don't happen too often. For it to work well, you're gonna need direct sunlight and very minimal movement. If you don't have these two factors, the image stabilization is gonna completely fail. For example, in this clip, I'm walking through a forest in overcast. The image stabilization absolutely fails here. The video becomes blurry with every step I take. In this example, I'm not holding the camera too great, and the camera can't compensate for my rapid, janky movement. It looks pretty bad. I don't know if my expectations are too high, but I expect an action camera to be at least able to stabilize walking, right? I'm not asking for it to, stabilize me doing a backflip on a motorcycle or anything stupid like that. This is just walking. Why can't it stabilize walking? If you are wondering about low light performance, the short answer is don't bother using it in low light. It absolutely sucks. It can't really see anything, and if it can see anything, the video stabilization will ruin your video anyway. Contrast isn't too great, but I've come to expect that from these types of cameras. It would be perfect if the Jumbotron and the field were properly exposed, but it's one or the other with this thing. Now, overall, I do like it, but it was so close to being really great. The 4K 60, it's unusable in most cases. The image stabilization needs perfect conditions to work, and even then, it's not that great. The LEDs on the front, why? At least have the option to turn them off. This badge, get rid of it, I hate it. The build, maybe have a little more rubber around this so that it's a little more protective of the screen. If I were to put a price tag on this, I'd say it's decent if you can find it for around $70 or under. That's how much I would personally pay for this. I'll end this video off with a head-to-head comparison between the 2K and the 4K modes, and there's a zoom in at the end.